My story is a tough story to tell. This type of thing happens every day to lots of people in countries around the world. This is my story of how I ended up in a high-security prison and escaped by seducing the prison guard with an offer he couldn't refuse. My name is Abby, and I grew up in a bad place. It was a very poor city, and the government controlled everything we did. They were so controlling that my city was cut off from the rest of the world, and we weren't allowed to talk to our family members who lived in other cities. They controlled the news, what we studied in school, and the internet. It's like they didn't want us to know anything or think for ourselves. We always had to watch our backs because the slightest thing could send you to jail. I heard stories of friends being taken away in the middle of the night, and no one knows where they went. The rumor is that they got snatched up by the police and thrown into prison for small crimes like reading illegal books. Me and my family always had to be careful about what we did. Even calling in sick from work could get you thrown into prison. Even though we grew up in such a terrible place, my parents loved me and my brother very much. They tried their best to put food on the table. Sometimes they would give up their food to feed us. We tried to stay as happy as we could, but I was always scared that one day my parents would be taken away by the police and disappear. And then one day, my worst fear came true. It actually happened. On my 16th birthday, I woke up and my parents were gone. Nobody told us what happened. I tried to go to the police station to find out more, but they kicked me out and told me that if I showed up again, they would throw me in prison too. Me and my brother were alone, with no food, no money, and no parents. What was I going to do? I got desperate, and since I was the older sister, I felt it was my job to provide for me and my brother. I tried to get a job, but they said I was too young to work. How was I even supposed to feed myself? We were so hungry and I had lost so much weight that sometimes we would just go to the grocery store just to look and smell the food. But we always got kicked out by this mean old lady who owned the grocery store. We didn't have any money to buy food, so one day I decided I would have to steal it. It was really risky, and if I got caught, I could be thrown into prison. But me and my brother were so desperate that it was either this or dying of starvation. So I decided to take my chances. One day, I brought a small bag with me to the store. I put on a little bit of a disguise so the mean old woman wouldn't recognize me, and went to get some bread. I quickly slipped a whole loaf of bread in the bag, then headed over to the cheeses. Right as I was grabbing some cheese, I heard a voice behind me yell, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" It was the old shopkeeper. She grabbed my bag and ripped it open, and out fell the bread, and I knew I was screwed. I begged her to let me go and not call the police, but she was a mean old lady, and she called the cops on me. They took me away immediately. I didn't even get to say bye to my brother, and they threw me in prison. Prison was a scary place, not because of the people, but because of the guards. Prison guards were known for being way meaner and more dangerous than the city policemen. They would sometimes beat the prisoners for even coughing or breathing too loud. If I wanted to live to see another day, I knew I had to get out of there as fast as I could. I had to use my brain and come up with a plan. I heard from one of the other inmates that one of the prison guards, Ryan, was looking for money, and he was desperate. He had a terrible gambling addiction and was in debt. He borrowed a lot of money from some pretty scary people, and if he didn't pay them back, they would hurt his family. Bingo! He was my ticket out of here, but that means I would have to get to work quickly. I started by spreading rumors around the prison that my family was super rich, and since my parents died, I would be inheriting all of the money they made from their secret business. The only reason I was in jail was because our neighbor got jealous and reported us for not paying enough taxes to the government. Word got around to Ryan, and one night he approached my cell and asked if the rumors were true. I played it cool. Everything was going according to plan. I asked him, "What's it to you?" in my flirtiest voice. He smiled and said that he could help me if I helped him. I told him that if he helped me escape from here, I could easily pay him more money than he'd need, since I have secret stashes of cash that only I knew of the location of. I managed to sound confident enough to gain his trust, and we agreed that the next night we would sneak out of the prison. This was definitely not going to be easy. Even if we managed to break out of my cell, sneak past the guards, there was still a huge electric fence with barbed wire we would have to get through. On top of that, we only have a few minutes to escape before the guards were alerted, and they would be looking for us with dogs. If we managed to escape them, there was still a river we had to swim across to safety. Ryan came by my cell at midnight and quietly unlocked my cell, took my hand, and led me towards the exit. We tiptoed very carefully to not make a single peep. If we got caught, both of us would surely face the death sentence. We managed to make it out of the building, but there were bright lights and prison guards patrolling the outside keeping watch. Ryan told me to change my clothes. He had snuck me in an extra uniform, so I quickly changed into the disguise and we continued forward. We hid in the dead of night, and we almost made it to the fence before we heard the sirens. The sirens meant they found out, and now we only had a few minutes to scale this wall and escape. Ryan and I bolted. We dropped the bags and started digging under the fence to escape. I panicked. I was so scared, but we kept digging as fast as we could. Together, we dug a hole small enough for one person to get through. I could hear the dogs barking, and they were coming toward us. I knew I had to do anything to survive, even if that meant betraying Ryan. I kicked him in the face and crawled under the hole to safety, and ran as fast as I could without looking back. I just kept running and running towards the river. I could hear Ryan shouting, but then I heard gunshots, and everything went quiet. I knew I had to keep going. I jumped into the river. It was freezing cold, and I was so exhausted, but I managed to make it across. I knew I had to get home to my brother before they found out it was me who escaped. They would be looking for me, and they wouldn't stop looking for me. I had to get my brother, and we had to escape. I felt guilty for sacrificing Ryan to save myself, but I didn't know him well enough to trust him, and I had to do whatever it took to save what was left of my family. Did I do the right thing? Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories like this.